So welcome back. Om Brahmanandam Paramasugadam Kevalam Jnanamurti Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadarsham Tattvamasyati Lakshim Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Satgurum. Now we will start. First I need to answer somebody's question. You had a question? Yes. Guru Kripa, the word explained means grace or blessings of the Guru. That's what it means. First thing is, we should understand that the ultimate Guru is none other than the Supreme Being. This is what I chanted just now. Okay? Now, second, you need to pay for it. I mean, not money. You need to work to get that grace. You need to serve, you need to do, you should be serious, and you should try and keep in touch and work towards asking for the blessings. It has a relevance that not if you are lazy and say, oh, everything will happen through Guru Kripa, then we will continue to wait for the Guru Kripa and nothing will happen. Okay? The Guru, if he is real, will also think, oh, this guy, they let him carry on for a while, enjoy his life. So we need to work towards it, to be able to invite the Kripa. In my case, I am to tell you, well, I did work hard and I did all that, true, but there was a certain element of grace without which I couldn't have gone further. And grace need not be in the form of touching somebody, or not required. It's a heart-to-heart communion. You understand? So for me, already at the age of 9, Babaji came searching for this lost soul and to my house in your state and touched my head. That was the first, what you might call Guru Kripa. But after that, I lost count. I didn't know where he was, what had happened. How many years from the age of 8.5, 9 to 19 years of age, nobody would have thought that any grace is coming. Lost touch. And then again I found him after the age of 19 when I ran away from home. So it works in strange ways. If you ask me to define, I cannot do that. I can assure you that any spiritual seeker who is genuinely looking for spiritual understanding will certainly attract the grace of first, the Supreme Being, second, whoever has been authorized to take care of him and take him further up. But you should always be open to it, work towards it. I personally think that the grace is always in the air. It's like the gentle breeze that blows. But you may not feel it because you shut your windows and doors. So our job is to keep the windows and the doors open through aspiration, through asking for movement in the spiritual journey, through being good and not hurting others. These are the ways to open the windows and the doors. The wind is there. You cannot dictate when the wind is going to come or not. You can't say now the wind has to come now or it has to go now. It will come on its own will. If you don't keep your windows open, it might miss you and go somewhere else. So our job is to keep the windows open. Yes, there is something like that, no doubt about that. I have no doubt about that, otherwise where would I have gone? Nowhere. Anything else? Now the word initiation in the old language which we use in India is called Diksha. Now Diksha is formed from the word Dig, direction, and Aksha, eyes, showing you which way to move. It is the primary meaning of Diksha. The primary meaning, the simple meaning of Diksha is to show the direction, to move. So if I show you the direction to move, and if it is done personally, not through books and videos, then it is already called initiation on one hand. If you are specifically looking for a Kriya Yoga initiation, then when I give you the Kriya, the initiation is over. Basically, it's the coming together of two minds, yours and mine. You see, many of these things happen not from outside into yourself, but when your mind and my mind are kind of vibrating in the roughly the same frequency, then whatever here it becomes yours. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So therefore, in the beginning, you need a personal initiation, unless you're an exception like Ramana Maharshi. We need a personal initiation. After that, it's not necessary that you should be always with me or I should be always with you, because many of the initiations are dropping a seed in the psyche, which grows and develops on its own and becomes a beautiful plant and then gives forth flowers and fruit. But once in a while it's not a bad idea to check with the gardener if everything is going okay. Once in a while, it need not be every day. Every day checking a plant is a terrible thing. Suppose I plant some little sapling and every night I pull it. It won't grow. But over the course of time, it's a good idea to check, to prune, to see if the soil is well done, see if water supply is okay. All these things a teacher is supposed to do. May not be done physically, you may not see. Tomorrow, if you look out of the window in your garden, and you see that some leaves are pruned, I might have come and pruned it, who knows.
So it needs proximity?
At least in the beginning, yes. Beginning proximity is required. But there is one problem, and I say this, many people complain and write to me, you were 3.5 years with Maheshwarnath Baba. What about, why are you not allowing us to come and be with you? Well, I was with him, yes, and I learned many lessons, and I've come back with the lessons. It's not necessary for you to be with me all the time. Now, be with me need not necessarily mean physically be with me all the time. To mind is good enough. And then, of course, we have Google God now, G. So we can also keep in touch, use advanced technology. This is also there. We have an option now. In the olden days, we didn't have this option. Every time we used to say, when is Babaji going to contact? Now, you see? Okay, shall we proceed? Yeah, so today morning I mentioned to you two things I want to clarify. That when you, in such matters, it is good to have a teacher. There may be exceptions, I understand. But it's good to have a teacher because it's largely unexplored territory. So So if there is someone who has walked on that road, they would know where the pitfalls are, and for you where you'd have to stand up and move carefully and so on. So it's a good idea to have, at least in the beginning of your spiritual journey, somebody guiding you properly. But one should not also commit the mistake of making the teaching less important than the teacher. This is also very important. If the teacher says you do this, I won't do all that for me. Suppose I come to you here, you come to me and I'm standing outside the gate and you ask me, how do I go to the Louvre or Sacré-Cœur or somewhere. And if I know, there are people probably who don't know but would still give you guidance, direction. There are many, but suppose I know, suppose. And then you come and you say, how do we reach there? I say, you go this way, then you come to a junction, then you turn left, and then you continue going. I don't have time right now, otherwise I would have taken you in my car, but this is the direction. Now, if you need to reach there, where you want to go, don't you have to drive, cycle, walk, do that to reach there? Will you reach there if you stay there and garland me and do some fire arati to me? You are the greatest teacher because you have shown me how to go to Sacré-Cœur, but you wouldn't reach there, right? You will be there stuck with me. So what I'm trying to say is, while it's true that the teacher is to be respected because he takes you to where you want to go, you should also follow the instructions and do what is to be done instead of saying, okay, you are the great, we may be greatest, we don't know. But so these are two important things. So I said, discussing this, that guidance comes to all spiritual aspirants, no matter who they are. If the aspiration is strong, then the guidance comes. I also said that it need not necessarily fall according to the pattern that you have decided. It can be different. You might have thought, this is my guide, and gone, and then everything breaks off, and then you are disappointed, and then somebody else comes along and says, look, and you say, no, this guy doesn't look like my idea of a guru. You miss it. So I wanted to tell you a Sufi story about the guru. That's where I left it, and then we proceeded further up. Please, we will learn Kriya, okay? Don't worry. There was this young young man. It's a Sufi story, so it is set in the Middle East. The scene is the Middle East. So this boy, when he was very small, he had an inner kind of aspiration for spiritual progress. There was a little flame there. But he was very poor. So he wanted to also make money, become rich, because he saw how people who were rich were enjoying. And in that part of the world, when you say rich, means you are a trader or a businessman or something. Or you have caravans that carry things across. So he worked very hard and he became very rich. There's one important thing to note. The human mind is so powerful because it is that which is linked to the Supreme, that if really, we call it sankalpa, really aspires to something and puts its complete attention on it, at some point or the other it becomes a reality. There is one capacity that we have which is divine, although we sometimes misuse it, but it's there. So he worked very hard because his idea was to become rich, and he became a very rich man. By the time he was 55, he had a fleet of caravans and so on and so forth. a merchant. But this little flame of spiritual aspiration was inside him, which was kind of overlooked. When he turned 55, when he had everything that the world can give, he thought to himself, but this has not given me happiness. I know how much happiness the dollar can buy, dollar or real or whatever of those things. Now I need to look for that little flame which was in my heart long ago and go back. So he decided, I've done my best, now I don't need anything. So he gave it away to his children and others and relatives. He had a small cottage in the oasis. You know what is an oasis? There is a little bit of water. He had kept a small cottage there. Because once in a while he used to go there and ruminate over nature and so on. He decided I would stop all work now. He was doing what in India, in Vedic terms, is called vanaprastha. I finished with life, now I'm going to look only for the divine. So he settled everything, went back to this little cottage of his in the oasis to meditate. He also carried a number of books with him, which he had collected, gathered over the years, because he was deeply interested in spiritual matters, at least theoretically. There was one big problem. Having lived as a rich man for so many years, he had forgotten even how to make a cup of tea. Well, it doesn't happen so in the West generally. We all make our own. I made my own coffee just now. But you know how it is in those countries. There's a cook and there is an assistant cook and his assistant has an assistant and so on. So this guy even forgot how to make a cup of tea. So he decided that he needs to have a cook with him. So in the nearby town, there was a guy, everybody said he's a good cook, so he contacted him, can you come with me? He said, okay. So the cook and he and his books was all there was in the oasis, in the little cottage. So he went there and stayed there for 7 years, reading, meditating, also looking to find out if there are any spiritual teachers around. He had an idea about what a spiritual teacher is. Maybe big beard, or matted hair, or turban on the head, rosaries on the neck. You know the usual paraphernalia. So every day he went out and explored, can I find somebody? Not satisfied, as if he knew who is good, but not satisfied. One day he saw a man and he said, this was about 7 years, I think he's a great teacher, he's a great spiritual man. How? Because he had exactly what he wanted, big beard, turban on the head, and that too a green turban, and a big robe, and rosaries on his neck and so on. And a very holy look on his face. So he went to him, greeted him, and he said, sir, I think you are a great spiritual person. Can you take me as your disciple? The man said 2 questions. 1, how do you know that I am a great spiritual teacher? First, okay, forget that. You probably don't, but that's okay. Second problem, I cannot take you as my disciple without asking my teacher, my sheikh, my guru. So he said, so why don't you do that? He said, that is the problem. Problem number 3. Because 7 years ago my teacher disappeared. I don't know where he is. If I see him and ask him, then I might take you on as my disciple. He said, so if you describe him to me, I can also help to find your teacher. We'll search together because I'm very serious about this. He said, okay. So how does it? He said, he's a small man. He wears no upper clothing. He only wears one lower clothing. And he usually has a towel on his left shoulder. I said, okay. And he's a very good cook. So he said, Just a minute, he said. Now this description that you gave me sounds like my cook. He has been with me for 7 years. So and you say he disappeared 7 years ago. So can you please come home with me? He said, why? He said, come please, I want to find out. So he took him home. And then the kitchen door opened and a man with the towel came out. As soon as the so holy man saw him, he fell at his feet and said, oh master, where had you disappeared? He said, I was with this guy. He said, but this guy has been there with you for 7 years and he's still looking for a teacher. Yeah, he said, it took him 7 years to figure that out. So what is to be done? He said, now you make him his disciple because I have other work to do, and walked up to the door. So, you know what I mean. You never know. Then the other thing is, apart from that, I'm going to tell you another story. You know, parables help. You know that there is a in Tibetan Buddhism, in the Vajrayana, there is one particular school called the Dzogchen. You know, if you've heard of this, you spell the Z with a D in the beginning, Dzogchen. The Dzogchen Buddhists claim to be the old school Elohats who come from Padmasambhava's teachings. So, there was a Dzogchen master. They say that when things are come to a proper condition, then illumination happens instantly. This is their belief. It's like the Satori of the Zen teachers. So there was a Dzogchen master and his disciple, and both of them were walking. The master was riding the horse and the disciple was walking. And then the disciple kept complaining, saying, it's 13 years that I'm with you. No Dzogchen has happened to me. What is going on? Why am I spending time with, and so on and so on. Master cool, going on the horse, listening to everything. Then they came near a huge, big hill. They stopped. And the master said, okay. He got off the horse and he said to the disciple, you see that side, there is a big bag? I said, yes. Do you see the bag? No. There's a big bag. And this side you see a lot of stones and brick bats, small pieces of stone. Yes, I see it, master. Okay. Bring the bag and fill it. It's not a bag, it's a sack. Fill it with the stones. So he filled it with the stones. Now, in India also we have such teachers. They behave in strange ways. They're called avdutas. If you go complain and just that these things, nothing is happening, they might give you one kick and then you're okay after that. So, Zen masters are also famous. Anyway, don't worry, I'm not like that. So, he said, okay. So he took the sack and he filled it with the stones, full, this height. Now what? He said, now put it on your shoulders. Okay. He said, this is too heavy. Can't bear it. You can't bear it? Okay, hold properly. Climb up that hill. He thought that the master wants to end my questioning, so he's trying to kill me. Anyway, he put it on his back. Laboriously climbed up the hill and he reached the top. When he reached the top, he was puffing and panting and he thought he was going to die the next minute. And the master already reached there. How? On the horse. He said, now what? He said, now? See that tree there? In the middle there was just one tree. Throw your bag. Throw down your bag and go sit there. So this guy who was suffering so much, he threw the bag And then he went and sat under the tree, took a deep breath. Master, I found it, he said. You know what it implies? That we carry so much dead weight on our heads and experiences, also all that we have learned. This whole thing becomes a big burden to us. When you throw that off, consciously seeing that it is a burden, it's a mind act, it's not a physical act. Then when everything is over, then you probably understand what Dzogchen is all about, the mind. And therefore, the corollary to be drawn from this is that you cannot find peace until there is some kind of disharmony. It is the opposite side. Without tension, you won't appreciate relaxation. How? All your life, if you are you won't even know the value of it. When you are tense all your life and you get a flash of relaxation, this is what it is. In fact, the whole principle of yoga asanas is to tense your muscles and then relax them. If you don't tense them, you cannot relax them. And therefore all the sorrows and pains of the world come to us to help us understand what is the sorrowless state. Because then you contrast and you know, yes, this is what it is. Right? So this is our journey. Okay. There is also this fact that great spiritual teachers sometimes can't be understood unless you live with them and see how they live in this terrible world. You can have, through the practice of meditation and various techniques, you can develop some extraordinary powers of the mind. But that is not the criteria. The criteria is someone under all circumstances, tranquil. It also doesn't matter what your concept of the Supreme Reality is, because after all it's a concept. We really don't know what the Supreme Reality is. So it doesn't matter what your concept is. But if you have certain attributes of your mind, then you're moving on the path. There is this beautiful dialogue called the Bhagavad Gita between Arjuna and Krishna and Arjuna. And there is one chapter which is called Bhakti Yoga. It's the 12th chapter. So many people ask, why did it go to the 12th chapter? If devotion, bhakti was so important, why don't you say that in the first chapter? The problem is Arjuna was not ready for it. In the first chapter, if Krishna would have said, this is bhakti, he would have said, oh, come on, can we talk about something else? I know all this bhakti business. But he had to go through. So, if you read the Gita, you will see that till chapter 9, Krishna and Arjuna are talking to each other almost on equal terms, just like we are doing now. Equal terms. Arjuna asks questions, Krishna answers them. Sometimes Krishna says, look, you have to have your mind very steady, like a flame without a wind and so on. And Arjuna says, just a minute, I can't do that. How can I do that? I can probably conquer the wind, but I cannot keep my mind steady as a flame without wind. So it's a nice dialogue going on. And then, in the 9th chapter, Arjuna might have thought Krishna is going bonkers. Because suddenly this Krishna, who was talking to him in such intimate terms, turns around and says, among the mountains I am the Meru. Arjuna is wondering what is going on now. This is the guy who is riding, who is the chauffeur of my chariot. Of course, he knows that he is a divine being, etc., etc. But among the mountains, I am the Meru. among the great rishis, I am Kapila. You know that Kapila is a great rishi, in fact, one of the first systems of Indian philosophy, Sankhya, was founded by Kapila. So, in fact, he is so important that Krishna declares in the Gita that among the rishis, I am Kapila. Then he says, among the immovables, I am the Himalaya. Among the Vedas, I am the Samaveda, and so on. And Arjuna is beginning to ask himself, is this man sane? Is this right that he was just talking to me only? Now he says, I am the Meru mountain. Now there's a controversy. Some people think Meru is in the Himalayas. Some people think Meru is the North Pole. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So how can this man become the North Pole? What's happening here? Arjuna's so-called very certain logical and rational blueprint is being slowly broken. Yeah? Okay. Then comes the 11th chapter. The 11th chapter, Arjuna suddenly sees that this guy who was sitting before him has completely transformed. He sees the entire worlds and the galaxy going in and out of him, and he sees the forms of many gods and everything coming out of this man. And his entire idea about Krishna is completely broken. His so-called rational blueprint, we all have our rational blueprints, which is good. But they are only our limited understanding which builds this up. It's all broken. When that is broken comes the 12th chapter, the yoga of devotion, where Krishna declares that you need the heart to understand these things. Your brain cannot take you beyond a certain point, and that when you understand that what you are seeking is beyond the capacity of your so-called brain, then you are beginning to understand it. If you put it in another way, this young lady who is sitting behind you, she said perhaps there are parts of the brain which are not awakened in most people, which are dormant. Perhaps when they awaken, you can see things more and better, and probably much more than what this brain, which only these parts which are working, operates on. So for that you need to first break this to come to that. So it begins, it's an interesting chapter. Most chapters of the Gita begin with Bhagavan Vacha, so said Krishna, the Lord. Here is one of those few chapters where it starts with Arjuna Vacha, Arjuna said. So I thought it was meant for all of us. We're all Arjunas. So, and what is the question that Arjuna asks is very interesting. But it's called Bhakti Yoga, Yoga of Devotion. He says that some say that the Supreme Being or the Supreme Reality is formless and almost intangible and beyond the concept of the senses, and so on and so forth. Some say that the Supreme Reality can also acquire a form and be like you sitting before me. Now he says, according to you. If you say, I'm ready to accept. According to you, which is the correct concept? Tell me. Now Krishna, as usual, doesn't give a direct answer. That's one of his faults, or I would say one of his good points. He doesn't give a direct answer. He gives an indirect way by which you reach the correct answer yourself. So he says, the great rishis who gave us the Upanishads, they experienced the Supreme Being as the formless, great, all-pervading being. True. But it's not possible for all human beings, normal human beings, to fix your attention on something that is so abstract and so intangible to the senses. And then he says, we human beings are generally people who live by form and name. If I know your name, when I say that name, I know that you are there. Your form comes into my mind. Or when your form comes into my mind, I know who this is. This is the person who is called so and so. So this whole world that we live is a world of name and form. It's called Nama and Rupa. And therefore, it's easier for us to connect ourselves with something which has a form and a name. That abstract concept happens when everything else is cleared. But till then, to keep our mind in a particular direction, it's good to have a name and a form. Because we live by name and form. We are attached to name and form. Primarily, we are attached to our own name and form. Right? What do we do when we wake up in the morning and go to brush our teeth? There is a mirror usually. So what are we doing? Looking at our form and seeing how many more hairs have gone grey, so on and so forth. How many more wrinkles have come. We are so fond of our own form name. I met a person in Mumbai who said that he doesn't believe in looking at idols and forms and all this is not. I said, then he took me home and took me for lunch. And all his walls were full of pictures of Amitabh Bachchan, who is a hero in India, film hero. He doesn't like to worship images. I said, what is all this? He said, well, he's a matinee idol. I said, okay. So you still have some attachment to it. So it's normal and natural. We like to keep our children, our parents in pictures. So we love name and form. So Krishna says to Arjuna, or if all that doesn't exist, we think of symbols. We may say, we don't believe in form, but we meditate on symbols. We may say, we don't believe in this, we believe only in the formless, but we may meditate on a sound. If nothing, we may meditate on the form of the Guru, which is also that. Because in certain lineages, the Gurus have taught that the best way to meditate is to let your mind settle down in the formless, but then you meditate on the Guru in some way and say, please take me there. Form. So, Krishna says, it doesn't matter what your modus operandi is, how you worship the Supreme Being, not so important. If you can, of course, you can go to that formless Supreme, or you can worship it in the form, it doesn't matter. But there have to be certain attributes in the person, in a spiritual aspirant. If these attributes are missing, then no matter which direction he takes, it's of no use. So Arjuna says, so what are the attributes of a yogi who is moving towards the Supreme? Krishna says there are three main attributes. One is samniyam indriya gramam. One has control over his emotions and his sense organs. One qualification. And two, you will go to the 12th chapter of the Gita and you will find it there. Two, second attribute, sarvatra samabuddhaya. Under all conditions, the mind remains tranquil, no matter what happens. Qualification 2 of a devotee. Qualification 3, he keeps the well-being of all people in his heart. Anybody knows that? That is one side. That is Samniyam indriya gramam. Sarvabhuta hiterata. Which means keeping the welfare of all living beings in his heart. If a person has these three attributes, then the person is moving on the spiritual path. No matter how he worships the Supreme, with, for, without, it doesn't matter really. So these are the things to be noted. What are the qualities to be developed? Sarvatra samabuddhaya means under all conditions the mind is tranquil. So, if somebody can walk on water or fly in the air without aeroplanes or produce rings made of gold from thin air, it doesn't matter. These are the things that are required. Houdini can also produce rings from thin air. No big deal. So, the main thing is, does one have these attributes to move forward? So while we do our Kriya, we should remember that the character, the mind, everything has to be purified and made tranquil. It's not just enough if we sit and breathe up and down.